Those who worship the Lord worship in spirit and truth. Those who say that they know Him must walk as He walked. Those who worship the Lord worship in spirit and truth. Those who say that they know Him must walk as He walked. He is the way and the truth, and in Him is the life. If we obey His word, then we walk in the light. He is the way and the truth, and in Him is the life. If we obey His word, then we walk in the light. If we say that we know Him, but we don't keep it, if we obey His word, then we walk in the light.
My dear friends, how's everybody doing this morning? Hopefully you're doing well. And we are in the 27th chapter of the book of Acts. And we're looking at the section here where Paul is sailing for Rome. Same issues as yesterday. Don, tell me, is it audio microphone related? I don't know. I'm going to keep on going here. I just got a notification that I'm having issues as yesterday, but on my end, things look like they're working okay. So I'm going to keep on going here. And okay, he says good now. So I don't always know what the stream is like out there. I know what things look like here in my little studio, and there are some things I have no control over, like the internet and exactly what happens with it, but hopefully everything is copacetic now. I'm going to keep going. Acts chapter 27, Paul is sailing for Rome, and he is going to experience trouble. Those on this ship are going to experience trouble. And so our consideration this morning is, what do we do in times of distress? What is our witness in times of distress? That is the title I have given to this as I read through the chapter and thought, what do we do with this? I mean, Paul is on a cruise, and I'm going to put something in here. And see if I can pick up on this for us and be able to show I'd meant to do this earlier, but my computer decided it needed to update this morning, and I lost cameras and whatnot. Technology, it's wonderful. What do we do in times of distress? You hit reboot. That's what you do. So we're going to look at a map here in just a moment. I'll get this pulled up. I want you to be able to see the map. Let me just slide this over. It's not going to be real clean or real pretty. It's just a screenshot here of a web page. But I want you to see the map and where Paul is sailing. And here we go. I mean, he's Caesarea, Sidon, and then we see this trip going up past Cyprus to Myra. On over, you see Fair Havens, and that's not the same as the Fair Haven here in Maine, just for the record. They sail past Crete. Over here, they hit Malta, and they're going to head up here ultimately to Rome, and this is where they're sailing. So as we're reading about this, in the text, you just kind of have an idea. I mean, they're basically trying to sail due west on the Mediterranean uh, on their way to Rome. They will experience this shipwreck and end up in another ship, but ultimately they do end up in Rome where they're supposed to be. And Paul will bring encouragement to them as they go along the way. Now, remember, he's sailing with sailors. They're not supposed to be afraid. They end up terrified. It tells you how bad the storm was. And Paul is the one who then speaks words of encouragement to them. So here we go. When it was decided that we should sail for Italy, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. Now, those details are important in the background because they give us insight into maybe the level of control or authority that this particular centurion had, and what it says he belonged to the imperial regiment, perhaps implying that his regiment worked directly for the Caesar, for the dynastic ruler. That may be some insight that you get from that. So that's where details like that become important. It says, we boarded a ship from Andramatium, about to set sail for the ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. He's a Macedonian. That's Greece, that area of Greece. Thessalonica, a little bit further north there, in that area of Macedonia. In fact, it might not even be part of Greece. It might be another country now. It says, the next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so they might provide for his needs. Now, it's very interesting. I mean, Paul is trusted enough that Julius says, okay, Paul, go ahead. He is not afraid that Paul is going to, quote unquote, abandon ship. He is not afraid that Paul is going to skip out on him. He is not afraid that Paul is not going to return. He believes Paul will return. So in kindness to Paul, he allowed him to go to his friends so they might provide for his needs. I mean, Paul had ministry supporters who were providing for his needs, and Julius, this centurion, allows Paul to go to them. And we don't know what they gave him, but we do know that he was able to go to them and they would provide for some of his needs. From there, and notice again, this is Luke writing here because it is he includes himself in this. So from there, we put out to sea again and passed to the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. Cyprus, again, looking at that, considering where Cyprus is. Here's Crete, Cyprus. Let me put this back up so you can see it here. Cyprus. I mean, they have not gone very far at all, and they have the winds that are against them. So they're going to go from Cyprus up here to Myra, and then we will see them end up at Fair Havens. And yes, that is not the one in Maine, not the one in Vermont either, just for the record, noting what Walter has said here in the comments. So they're not very far. Here's Cyprus, not very far off the coast of Israel or Syria at all. So they're already experiencing trouble. Verse 5, when we had sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. There, the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. Perhaps a larger ship. Again, someone could study the detail and say, okay, what about that Alexandrian ship? We know that it's from Alexandria, which was part of Egypt, northern Africa, and you could press in and do some research on Alexandrian ships and perhaps find it was a larger ship, a stronger ship, a more apt ship. Those things you could search out. I have not done that for you in this particular segment. But why an Alexandrian ship? Why is that detail important? Perhaps it gives us some insight into the type of ship. Again, some study, some commentaries would bear out that. I had to deal with some technological stuff, so I didn't get some extra study in that I may have wanted to. It says, we made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off Sindus. When the wind did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee of Crete, opposite of Salmone. So again, putting this back up, putting the map back up so you can take a look. And here you see them and where they are sailing at this point in time. And here we're going to end up seeing Paul's ship being lost in a storm as we continue reading the text. Paul warns them. It said much time had been lost. In fact, I skipped a verse here. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens near the town of Lasea. Much time had been lost and sailing had already become dangerous because by now it was after the Day of Atonement, which this must mean that it is a time when they would know, hey, these are the dangerous times to sail the Mediterranean. It's kind of like the seasons that we think of. There are seasons to be on the Great Lakes and seasons to not be on the Great Lakes. There are seasons to be on the Mediterranean, seasons not to be on the Mediterranean. And so that is why this detail is important. After the Day of Atonement, the sailing would become much more difficult. It says, so Paul warned them. Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo and to our own lives as well. Paul being a weather person in this instance, perhaps the Lord giving him discerning insight into what is going to happen. And maybe Paul's trying to say, we ought to find a place to dock and just stay there. And perhaps that is the point of what Paul's saying, because verse 11 goes on and indicates that the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. Sometimes we can be brazen, sometimes we can be obstinate. Who is this guy that's going to tell me what to do? I will show him. I mean, can you see the attitude there? The attitude of, I'm just going to press on. You're telling me I can't do it? That's all the more impetus. That's all the more motivation for me to press ahead foolishly. And you've been around people like that? I remember observing a guy one time hauling a load of crushed stone into a driveway and kind of maybe wanting to show off a little bit. Almost tipped his dump truck over because the stone was a little heavier than he thought. Next thing we know, the front end of the truck is up in the air like this, and he brought it back down. But for a moment, I thought, he's going to tip that thing over. Maybe that's you sometimes. Maybe that could be me sometimes, where someone tells us we can't do something. We're going to press ahead and prove that we can do it anyway, even though we know it's foolishness to do such a thing. So we see this guy pressing on. Verse 12 tells us, since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided that we should sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix, that's not Arizona, and winter there. This was a harbor in Crete, facing both southwest and northwest, telling me it must have been on the west. So again, coming back, looking at the map, here is the Crete, and here is where they're going to camp out in that area, or dock maybe is a better way of putting it, in that area of Crete, facing north and south, facing the west. And maybe that is the worst place to be because the winds may be blowing from west to east, and it may make it even a more dangerous place. We'll see why this is put in here. We're going to see exactly what happens. Luke actually gives us great detail about all of this, and people who would sail those parts would go, okay, this is why this is a bad idea. We continue reading. It says, when a gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity, so they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force, called a northeaster, swept down from the island. The ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind, so we gave way to it and were driven along. We passed to the lee of a small island called Cauda. We were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure, so the men hoisted it aboard. Then they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. I mean, they're trying to get ropes underneath so that they can hold the ship together. They're that terrified. It says because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars of Syrtis, they lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. We took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. And Paul had told them, I can see where the ship and the cargo is going to suffer losses. Remember, he had already said that to them. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, I mean, it was a dark, dark storm. And the storm continued raging. We finally gave up all hope of being saved. After they'd gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, men, you should have taken my advice. In other words, what's Paul doing? What words is Paul saying to them? I told you so. You should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. But now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost, only the ship will be destroyed. Again, Paul speaking prophetically, apparently the Lord giving him insight into this, speaking prophetically that no one will be lost. In fact, he does tell us in verse 23, he says, last night an angel of God to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. Verse 25, so keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island. I mean, what do we do in times of distress? What is our response in times of distress? Do we give way to the despair, or do we bring hope? Do we bring faith to bear? Do we bring hope to bear? What do we bring to bear in these times of despair? This is a time of despair. This is a time of danger. This is a time of fright. And just what are our responses in these times? Now, we can think about this right now. I mean, you can read testimonials from people in Texas, people that have lost children, people that have lost loved ones. In some instances, their faith comes beaming through, even though they've experienced such heartache and such loss and such devastation. You can read the hope. You can read the love. You can read the faith in the lives of some of the people down in Texas, especially around the Christian camps. You're reading about these things. And yet, when I watch the news or listen to some of the broadcasts, all they're trying to do is find people to blame. What do we do in times of despair? What is your response in a time of despair? Does your life, does my life, do we bring a witness in times of despair, a witness of faith, a witness of love, a witness of hope, a witness of confidence in God, or do we throw ourselves into it and just act with despair, act with discouragement, act with depression, act with disillusionment, act with complaining, or as Fran has said, pray onward with hope. That's a great phrase. Pray onward with hope today, and that's the best response. That may not be your natural response, and I would encourage you to pray with a supernatural response. Look to God, look to Christ for the response that you can and should have, and pray onward with hope in faith. Add those two words, hope in faith, trusting God. Paul brings these words of encouragement down here to the people. Don't be afraid. Paul reveals to him that Paul must stand trial before Caesar. And this angel telling him that God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. And he tells them, and they know that Paul is on trial. They've heard Paul. They've seen Paul. He has been a witness to them already, and perhaps his life adds strength and confidence to their lives. Let's go a little further down in the text here. It says this, on the 14th night, imagine, 2 full weeks now, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea when, at about midnight, sailors sensed they were approaching land. They took soundings and found the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took soundings, and again it was 90 feet deep. Fearing that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. In an attempt to escape from the ship, the sailors let the lifeboat down into the sea, pretending they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. Then Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved. So the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat, and let it drift away. Just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, you've been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you, take some food. You need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. After he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to God. Think of communion. And think of the witness he is giving. Think of the confidence he is giving. Took bread, gave thanks in front of them all. Then he broke it and began to eat. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 of us on board. This is a large ship. When they had eaten as much as they wanted, they lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. So, I mean, they're losing their cargo. And I don't know how it worked. I mean, it's like losing money. I don't know what type of guarantees they had or warranties that they would be able to deliver, but they're now throwing cargo overboard. But Paul encouraged them. That act of faith, of taking the bread, of eating the bread, of giving thanks for the bread, it encouraged their heart. It did say in verse 36, they were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Then what do we read here down at the very end, the last part of this chapter? When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach, where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea, and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding of the surf. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming and escaping. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept him from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on planks or other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. I mean, the centurion trusted Paul. He'd seen Paul. Paul had brought comfort. Paul had brought strength. Who knows what types of conversations they had had on board. This could have been the end. They could have killed all the prisoners at this point, and we don't know how many of the 276 were prisoners. We don't know how many of the 276 were centurions. We don't know how many of the 276 were part of the crew on board the ship. But we do know that what the soldiers planned to do is to kill them all, and the centurion says no. Paul's witness in time of distress. That's the question I have for us as we move to wrap up this broadcast this morning. What does your faith demonstrate in a time of distress? I mean, I'm thinking about this morning. Not that I'm in a time of distress, but I need to live with incredible faith right now on several fronts. Incredible faith for our college, incredible faith for our own personal provisions, incredible faith dealing with some health things. We just need to deal with faith. Will we deal with fear, give way to fear, as they had every reason to give way to fear, or will we hold on to the rope of hope? Using a little sailing analogy there. Will we hold on to faith? Will we trust in God? And that is the message I have for you today. Let your witness shine through in a time of distress. When we throw ourselves into vulgarness, when we throw ourselves into crippling fear, when we throw ourselves into whining and complaining, it's not a witness. But we need to have the witness that we're trusting in the Lord no matter what we're going through. This message may be coming to you today because you're about to go through something. Maybe I'm about to go through something. I don't know. But my hope is, my prayer is that this broadcast, this podcast today will strengthen your faith, to have the faith of a Paul, to have the hope of a Paul, to hold on to Christ, to trust in God. I mean, that was the message that Jesus had for his disciples again and again and again. Won't you trust me? The feeding of the thousands. He's trying to communicate to the disciples, trust me. The two occasions, there were more than two occasions, but the two occasions of the storms on the sea where Jesus calmed the seas, trying to get the disciples to trust him. Today, he's trying to get us to trust him. Will we trust him? Will we have faith? Will we have hope? Will we have a witness that points others to Christ in a time of distress? Lord, may that be us. May we have that type of hope. May you strengthen our hope. May you strengthen our love. May you strengthen our faith, that in a time of distress, others would see our faith and would be encouraged and emboldened to trust you as well. Lord, help us to be great witnesses for you. In Jesus' name.